Springwood gets its slasher. Here's your relook at the NECA toys. This is the Freddy's Dead, the Final Nightmare Springwood slasher Fred Krueger. From Freddy's Dead, the Final Nightmare comes Freddy Krueger action figure from NECA Toys. Standing 7 inches tall with multiple points of articulation, this figure depicts the likeness of actor Robert Englund as he appeared as Freddy before the burns. Now we're going to be dipping our toes back into re-reviewing Freddy Krueger here, per the request of viewer Courtney. She had reached out to me and asked first if I still had this figure, and if I did, would I consider re-reviewing him? Well, Courtney, the answer to your question, thank you for contacting me, by the way. Certainly, if you guys are looking to reach out to me at all, outside the realm of YouTube, you can follow me over on places like Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. But anyways, Courtney had asked, and I did say yes, I still have him, because it's one of my prized pieces from the Nightmare figure line that NECA Toys have released. And certainly when this guy as well be a case also that we don't have him in an ultimate figure form, he is again one of my prized pieces in my collection. So I was more than happy to re-review him, and I certainly hope you enjoy this review, Courtney. According to my trusty tape measure, Fred Krueger, if you don't mind me calling you Fred, stands 6.8 inches in height. Translating that to centimeters, you're looking at the figure standing about 17.5, 17.4 to be exact. For the sake of a few comparisons, we can bring in some of the other Freddys that we've looked at in the past. I have that itch, don't worry, I'm going to go scratch it, of maybe doing some re-reviews on a lot of these Freddy figures. So if you're in the market of that, let me know if you guys would be interested. But here are a couple of comparisons of some of the other Freddys that we've looked at before. This one happens to be part 1 Freddy from the Ultimate line. And this one also happens to be Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. One thing is very apparent when you look at the one in the middle here. Fred Krueger, while he does benefit from having articulation in his arms and his elbows, sadly lacks it when it comes to the waist down, resulting in the figure standing out like a sore thumb. There it is, my thumb right there. Because the other figures do have articulation in the lower legs. They have articulation in both the thighs can swivel, they have articulation in the knees, and they have articulation in the boots. Fred Krueger only has articulation in the waist and in the feet, and as you can see, he's permanently staction. In other words, his legs are permanently posed like that, and have zero posability to speak of. Not only is he limited on posability, but Fred Krueger unfortunately doesn't come with much in the way of accessories either. The only thing he actually comes included with at the time that he was initially released is he comes with his Fedora Hat, which in the case of this one, I'm just going to bring in one of the other ones that we had a look at. This one here I think was from Nightmare on Elm Street 3, the Ultimate Freddy Krueger that was over here. It was right over here. It's pretty much the exact same hat, although the banding here has been painted in black. This one doesn't have the banding at all, but other than that, I mean, there's a pinch on the top there, but it's a very similar designed looking hat. Freddy Krueger does have the abilities, at least, to be displayed with the hat on his head. But I kind of feel it just looks awkward on him. It doesn't really sit in place as well as it should. And though I try to push down on it, it seems to want to resist the urge to stay on his head. The other thing I'm also worried about too is I don't want to be putting this on his head too often for the risk of damaging the portrait of what I feel is a really good likeness of Robert Englund. Now, say what you certainly will about Freddy's Dead, it's not one of the better of the Nightmare films, but it was interesting certainly to find out that he had a daughter, and the fact that you sort of learned a little bit more of Freddy's backstory. This is also where this figure is pulled from, and like I said, it's a pretty good likeness, all things considered, for Freddy Krueger, or Fred Krueger at least, before he's burned. As a comparison, we'll take the fedora off his head for a second, and we'll just bring in Freddy Krueger from, this is the first Freddy from the Ultimate line. Yeah, they don't really bear the most striking of resemblances to one another. This Freddy is horribly, horribly burned. But you can definitely see where it could have started from with this figure and where it could have ended from where you get this Freddy from the first Nightmare film. I still want to go back and maybe re-review that guy at some point. The other thing about these particular figures too is when the earlier Freddy figures came out, yes, sure, they had articulation in the shoulders, which was nice. They had the articulation in the elbows. I know I'm sort of running through all the posability on these figures early. Unfortunately, the lower half was all relegated to staction. In other words, they were pre-sculpted. The legs sure had that very familiar stance that Freddy was known for in the films, but yeah, you couldn't do anything with really the legs. The legs also looked a little on the baggier side, which, again, only more reasoning why you would definitely want this particular figure to get an ultimate treatment, where you could, for example, have the lower legs like this guy with full articulation. Believe you me, I have considered the idea with a lot of the Freddys. A lot of times, usually what the only difference is the head, the glove, and maybe this hand right here. Sometimes you may have instances like where the arm had to be changed out. But really, if you wanted to, you could take a lot of those elements, pop the hand off, pop the glove off, and pop the head off, and simply just swap around till eventually you get the Freddy that you really want for your collection. Fred is a little bit different, at least. Yeah, sure, you could take the glove off. That's not so much the issue. You can easily also take off Freddy's hand. You just pop this off the ball joint like so, and you can just easily swap out Robert's hand with one of the scarred hands from the other Freddys, and then you'd be all set. The problem is, though, you couldn't even take the head off. You could if you wanted to, but what's left behind is the neck. And unless, for example, you bring in, say, Freddy Krueger here from part 3, you wouldn't want, at least I know I wouldn't want to have a scarred neck Freddy with a human face Fred Krueger. It just wouldn't work that way. So then the other options available presented in front of me. What if I was to try to take the torso off? Believe you me, again, this is a thought that I've considered myself until NECA eventually releases a version of Fred as an ultimate figure. In theory, I suppose you could take the torso off. I mean, really, again, that's the only thing that's difference between this figure and the other Freddys, the recent Freddys that we have now. I mean, if you could just take the torso off, and for the risk of breaking it, I haven't done so, but I'm sure you could probably heat this, take the entire torso piece off, find a Freddy that you may have extras of, maybe like this one here, for example, and swap the torsos out. That way you'd have the full neck, you'd have the full hand, and the full glove, and you wouldn't even have to do any swapsies in that department. You simply just could take one torso piece off and switch it with the other. Again, this sounds good on paper, and believe you me, I've thought it. It's in my head all the time. I know, literally all the time, whether if I could actually take the whole torso piece off. I mean, if you look at it underneath, there is like it's basically like the sweater's soft rubber, and it's over top of a black body torso. If you could wiggle and finagle that enough, I mean, you could even maybe take the top torso piece off. Basically, this part up, you could probably even remove and keep this sweater, of course, as part of it, and leave the lower half. Believe you me, again, if it's possible, and somebody has done this, certainly let me know down below in the comments section, but it's one of the only ways that you can kind of get around the idea of giving this particular Freddy articulation in his lower legs, when currently right now he doesn't have the ability, or doesn't sport it at least. Going back again to his face sculpt, I really do like the head sculpt for Freddy. I mean, it's got a nice skin coloring to it. Sort of see some small imperfections also to Freddy's face, the skin as well. He sort of has such an innocent look on his face. If only we actually knew he killed children. Kind of changes things a little bit now. He does also have the widow's peak for at least actor Robert Englund's head sculpt. I mean, you could certainly make use of this head in other places as well. Even if, and this is a far-off reference, if you like the film Danse Macabre, which is remarkably one of my more interesting Freddy Krueger or Robert Englund films, you could probably even pull his head off and make a custom for that movie. Has anybody seen Danse Macabre? It's a spectacular movie. I could probably spend a little bit of time in an extra video talking about my love for that movie. As for the rest of his sweater, it's got some nice texturing done to it. You can see how it's been printed in the alternate colors of the green and the red, which carry itself also into the stripes. Ironically enough, this predates Nightmare on Elm Street, and yet if you look at the two Freddys side by side, technically in Freddy's Dead, I'm not going to be too much a stickler for detail, but I suppose in Freddy's Dead he should have had no stripes in his sleeves. Just again, a little small talking point. I guess really in all instances where it's a flashback, Freddy's Dead, for example, as well, Fred Krueger should have actually had no stripes in his sleeves. Anyways. Looking at his glove, it's got some nice detailing done to it. It seems to kind of carry over the same sort of design as one of my favorite Freddy movies. I was going to say Friday the 13th, Freddy movies, and that is Nightmare on Elm Street 4. Kind of has the same sort of deco done to the, especially like on the knuckle areas there. Those little markings that they put on that glove. It's a very interesting looking glove. It's a shame though that the blades are so warped. I mean, when I haven't had this guy on display, he's usually been relegated to a little bag. So as a result of that, these poor little blades, these tiny little children, all each smaller than the last, are all slightly warped. I'm going to have to probably heat this up, bend these back in place, and make them straight and sharp the way that they should be. At least straight, at least. The paintwork's done nicely on each of the individual blades. You can see there's some weathering done with just a little bit of paint dolloped on each one of the blades. Again, it's this little pinky blade. It's always the pinky blade, isn't it, that causes me the most angst. As for, again, the pants are not quite even black even. They've got slightly a more shinier, it's almost like a really dark gray. And then for his feet, the feet in this case are actually more brown. If you compare it again to the regular Freddy, the Ultimate Freddy, his shoes are clearly black. And also you'll see that they sport laces, whereas this Freddy doesn't actually have laces. It's interesting that they didn't even use the exact same shoes from one figure over to the other. It's almost like they literally just created a brand new sculpt for the lower legs, which again, this Freddy right here, the Fred Krueger, sadly doesn't have leg articulation. I really hope this can be rectified with a later release, because I really do feel like there's merits for this guy getting released and treated to an Ultimate figure. And while all the other Freddys do have the options where, again, you can kind of just pop the hands off, pop the gloves off, pop and change the different heads, Fred is unfortunately really relegated to this figure. And there's not much wiggle room outside of that, other than maybe wiggling off the torso and seeing if you can swap it out to one of your other Freddys in your collection. Articulation on this guy, his head rotates all the way around, and it hinges up and down, rocks also back and forth. His arms also rotate all the way around, whatever arm you decide you want. This arm, okay, we'll do this arm. Rotates all the way around. You can also hinge them out at about a 90-degree angle, just a little less than 90 degrees. If you want to get those warm hugs from Fred, now's the time to do it. Oh, right, yeah, he's going to cut you up. He does have a bend at the elbow. You can rotate at the forearm, and then whatever hand you decide to go and swivel, you can do that on both the gloved hand, and you can also do that on his regular human hand. Unburned, sans le fire hand. He has the upper torso ball joint, and he does have a lower waist swivel as well. And then, nothing. Nothing. Well, that's not true. He does technically have foot articulation, which you can move those feet back and forth. I was found with these particular Freddys, the older ones at least, because they were so relegated with sculpted lower halves, they were a little bit more difficult to stand. So a lot of times I just cheat. I say I'm not going to deal with the fuss and the muss of it. I'm just going to put him on his display stand. I'm going to call it a day. He's still a nice looking, one of my favorite Freddys. Unfortunately, he dates himself in the sense that the lower half is sort of relegated to just sculpted statue. He does also include the hat, which for me, again, the hat doesn't work. The hat I'm just going to leave it off completely. Sure, yes, he could come with some extra accessories, a couple of dolls perhaps, and newspaper clippings, but let's just hope we'll leave those in the good hands of NECA Toys, that maybe we do down the road, you never know, fingers crossed, we do get ourselves another Ultimate version of Fred Krueger, at least with now articulation in his lower half, and then you can put him most definitely with the other NECA Freddy figures that we've collected up to this point. Well, Mr. Krueger seems like a nice enough fellow, nice demeanor, and a green and red striped sweater. I'm sure he can look after our kids, right? Oh, wait a minute. No, on second thought, maybe that's not a good idea. Sneaky Freddy Krueger is hiding his bladed glove behind his back. Ironically enough, this was the way I was displaying the figure before I decided to re-review him at the request of Courtney. Unfortunately, he is one of the figures that last standalone figures from the Freddy's library of figures that NECA have yet to re-release in an Ultimate form. Sure, yes, you could do that with the other Freddys, that you can simply just change out the heads, change out the hands, change out the gloves, change out the accessories, yada yada yada, and you can easily just mix and match until you get the Freddy that you want for your display. Freddy Krueger is unfortunately not like that from Freddy's Dead. Because he bears the strong likeness, I might also add, of Robert Englund, and because he does have the human neck, you just can't pop the head off. It doesn't work that way. You can wish it all you want, mister, but you can't simply just pop Freddy's head off and replace it with one of the Freddys in your collection, because he's ultimately going to have a scarred neck. You don't want that at all. The workaround, of course, to that is something that I've considered myself: heating up the torso, popping it off the lower half of him, and swapping it out with articulated legs. I feel like that's going to be something that seems good and simple on paper, but then when I actually get around to doing it, it's going to be breaking, it's going to be me cussing. It's not good for anybody. So what instead I'm planning to do is just wait it out. Enjoy the fact that I still have this one in my collection, with the fingers crossed and the high hopes that NECA Toys will re-release this guy in an ultimate figure form. Essentially, they only need to really keep everything the way that they had it, just change the lower half of him. Sure, if they want to just upgrade the figure, they could probably enhance the colors of his sweater, make them a little bit brighter. The face sculpt is fine the way it is, and maybe throw in some trinkets from Freddy's Dead. You could throw in, for example, the school hamster, even though it was a younger Freddy for that. You could include some newspaper clippings, some photos of kids, and maybe, why not, you could throw in a couple of dolls there as well. Maybe give Freddy Krueger a scrapbook that you could put on display with him. There's a lot of real cool potential going for this guy that we hope, and I certainly hope, that NECA Toys will consider down the road, re-releasing this guy with the much-needed articulation that he so rightly deserves. He's like one of the last ones. He's literally the last in Elm Street. Freddy Krueger, ladies and gentlemen. Don't, by the way, have him look after your kids. It's such a bad idea. I don't know if you've seen the movies. Take my word for it. Such a bad idea. Today, though, at the request of Courtney over on Facebook, we were having a look at least, at the NECA Toys. This was the Freddy's Dead, the Final Nightmare, and this was Freddy Krueger, or Fred Krueger if you know him personally. Just don't let him look after your kids. If you guys are new to this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, turn the bell notification on, and heck now, if there's anything that you'd like to see me re-review on this channel, you can either let me know down below in the comments section, or you can swing on over and follow me through various different social media outlets, such as your Facebook, such as your Twitter, such as your Instagram. You can follow me going on and doing all my stuff behind the scenes when I'm not working doing reviewing. You can follow me along in those various outlets. And heck, why not just ask me some of the stuff that you'd like to see me re-review on this channel? You can ask me over there as well. Stay tuned, members of the mob. Certainly, while we did re-look at this guy as a figure that we had looked at in the past, there certainly is going to be a lot of mixing of older figures and newer stuff on this channel. So if you are fancying some of the stuff that's coming out to stores now, you'll be seeing it here on this channel, and you'll also be seeing some sprinklings of older things from past. Certainly my past, of things I've looked at before. So there's going to be a good happy mix of the two. Make sure, again, you're staying tuned to this channel to the regular 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. time slot, Monday to Friday. That's going to be when videos are hitting this channel on a regular basis. Want to try to keep it to a regular time slot so that you guys know when to come and look at videos. As always, guys, thanks for watching, as you always do, and I'll see you guys next time.